of Acts, and it's verses 1 to 11. Acts chapter 18, verse 1 to 11. Thank you very much, Sonia.
Acts 18, 1 to 11. Then Paul left Athens and went to Corinth. There he became acquainted with a Jew named Aquila, born in Pontus, who had recently arrived from Italy with his wife Priscilla. They had been expelled from Italy as a result of Claudius Caesar's order to deport all Jews from Rome. Paul lived and worked with them, for they were tent makers just as he was. Each Sabbath found Paul at the synagogue trying to convince the Jews and Greeks alike. And after Silas and Timothy came down from Macedonia, Paul spent his full time preaching and testifying to the Jews, telling them the Messiah you are looking for is Jesus. But when the Jews opposed him and insulted him, Paul shook the dust from his robe and said, "Your blood be upon your own heads. I am innocent. From now on, I will go to the Gentiles." After that, he stayed with Titus Justus, a Gentile who worshipped God and lived next door to the synagogue. Crispus, the leader of the synagogue, and all his household believed in the Lord. Many others in Corinth also became believers and were baptized. One night, the Lord spoke to Paul in a vision and told him, "Don't be afraid. Speak out. Don't be silent. For I am with you, and no one will harm you, because many people here in this city belong to me." So Paul stayed there for the next year and a half, teaching the word of God.
Right. It's good to see you. There we are. When you came in this morning, did you come in alone? Because the sermon that we're looking at today is about a man who, when he first comes into the chapter, is alone. Feeling very alone and isolated. He had travelled, that's Paul now, he travelled from north to south. He left Philippi, come into Thessalonica, gone into Berea, from Berea down into Athens in southern Greece, and then he finds himself at Corinth. At Corinth, he makes his way, after a number of years, to a place called Cenchrea, and then he sails away to Ephesus. He's a journeyman in that regard. But it's quite clear that he enters Athens alone. He leaves Athens, alone, and comes into Corinth. But the consolations of the gospel are such that you meet old friends and new friends. The first instance that we have of him coming into Corinth, he meets two people that he hasn't met before. Personally, I think Aquila and Priscilla were already converted. There is no mention of their conversion or Paul leading them to Christ or them believing in any way or form upon listening to his word. There's a link as soon as they come together. They have a link in sense of their ability to work. They work as tent makers. And so that would be the way that they would earn money. So that was one link. But they had another link. And that link was to forge a friendship that would last for the rest of his days. It's this couple that he speaks of. Aquila is the husband, Priscilla is the wife. Very often you will find Priscilla. In fact, in this chapter, you will find Aquila named first, but then later on in the chapter, Priscilla is mentioned first. Again, perhaps she was somewhat equivalent to Lydia, that lady that was such a strong individual character that could hold her own in a masculine world. She could stand her ground without being arrogant, without being, unmovable in the sense that she set her face to the wind and that was it, or set her sail to the wind and that was it. We find with Priscilla that she too must have been a woman that was able to win people. And so we find concerning these that Paul writes of them later. He writes of Aquila and Priscilla, for whom they have laid down their necks for my life, and to whom I give thanks. But not only I, churches of the Gentiles. And so he comes in alone, but he immediately makes new friends. And that's one of the consolations and comforts of the gospel, you know. You'll meet someone, and they become your friend. Sometimes it's just a passing moment, but sometimes it's a lifelong friendship. Then we find the two old friends. Timothy and Silas have joined him from Thessalonica. When he was at Athens, he sent them back because the church there was in difficulties, and he sent them back with a letter and to find out news about how they were coping under the stress and strains of being a Christian in a hostile environment. And so they go there, he's in Athens, he preaches in Athens, and he comes to Corinth. And there he meets Silas and Timothy. They catch up with him. Silas had suffered with Paul in Philippi. He had taken the same beatings that Paul had taken. And I would imagine there's a tremendous affinity between those that have suffered for the sake of the gospel together. We are told that we to remember those that are in prison as being in prison with them. And for those that have been in prison with others that have been in prison with them, not just spiritually now, but physically in the same prison, taking the same beatings, there must be a tremendous sense of affinity there. And so he comes into the city alone. He meets new friends. But it's good to see old friends as well. And of Timothy, he writes concerning him, he is a son to me in the gospel. I have no man like-minded that will naturally care for your state like Timothy. Sometimes we have to be encouraged, told, sometimes ordered to do the duties that God brings to us. But there are times when we come across the Timothys of the church who will naturally care for your state. He doesn't have to be told. He's got that eye. You're going to be of the highest rank in the church, an apostle. And yet Paul, when he was shipwrecked and landed on Malta, we find that he, not the disciples, but he went looking for wood to build a fire. Who will naturally care for your state. But as well as that, new friends, old friends. He comes into the city, and there's a man there called Justus, who lived next to the synagogue. I always thought of Royal Marine. Whenever I read that verse, I know there was that building in between Elim and Roy's house on St. Fagin Street, but I always thought of them whenever I read that verse, Royal Marine, whose house was next to the synagogue. He opened his house to Paul. When he writes to the Corinthians, he talks of times when he was without food, sometimes fasting, but sometimes just without food, sometimes unable to sleep, sometimes out in the wilderness, sometimes in the sea. What a home this must have been there, that a man that he's never met before will open his house there, who worship God we are told. The consolations and comforts of the gospel, friends in Christ. Working alone, it seems that he'd gone into the synagogue, and there the leader or ruler of the synagogue, with all his house, believed and was baptized. Isn't it wonderful that Paul is able to feel within his heart that God still works through him? It is quite clear that another is with him as well. One that brought great consolation to Paul as well. One who pondered and saw beyond the surface. Here was a man that was willing to travel the world for Jesus. Here was a man that was willing to be beaten, to be imprisoned, to be isolated, to be alone. There was another with him, we are told. In verse 9 it says, that night, the Lord spoke to Paul in a vision. I wonder if Paul's special prayer time was in the night, because it was at night he had a vision and heard that man saying to him, come over into Macedonia and help us. Now me, unless there are occasions, when if I go into the little room, the little study at night and late, I can go through and it's no struggle for me. But generally in the night, my head only wants to do one thing, and that's put itself on the pillow. My better time is in the morning, and I know for some of you, it's in the morning that you're better. But I often wondered if Paul's time, when he would be alone, would be in the night. And that night, the Lord spoke to Paul in a vision. Do not be afraid. What does that tell you then? That he was afraid. That's what that's telling you. That he was afraid. But speak. Do not be silent. That infers that he had feelings within his heart to be silent. For I am with you. And I have many people in this city. It's lovely to meet new friends, Priscilla and Aquila, lifelong friends, that would give up their life for you. Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever felt a love for a Christian believer that you're willing to put yourself out? It goes beyond duty here and now. It's a devotion to those around you. And here Paul speaks of this brother, that they lay down their lives, not at this point, that was to come in later days, but they were so loyal a friend. Silas and Timothy, affinity in suffering, a son in the gospel, a new friend. Justus opens his house. Crispus and his house believe the words of Paul and are baptized. But with it as well, if you heard that whisper into your heart, don't be afraid, I'm with you. It's the consolation, see, of the gospel. Paul gives us a little bit of insight into how he was feeling when he came into Corinth. He writes to them in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, and he says these words, when I came to you, I was with you in weakness and in fear and trembling. You see, he'd been to Philippi, was beaten, imprisoned, and left. He didn't leave being chased. He, in fact, stood his ground, and he left at his own choice. But he'd been beaten and imprisoned. At Thessalonica, there had been an uproar in the city, and he'd been nigh on chased out of the city. In Berea, those people in Thessalonica that didn't like him followed him to Berea and caused similar trouble there. When he got to Athens, it was so different. There, people were so educated that they didn't work. That doesn't mean that if you're educated, you're not going to work. But at that time, for those, they were so well educated that they would do nothing but sit down all day and sit and talk, asking and answering questions. And when Paul came into Athens, they asked him to preach, and he preached. And we heard that they mocked and laughed. And just a few believers, mind you, I'd be happy with that. One visit, and a lady by the name of Dionysius, or a man by the name of Dionysius, and a few well-to-do women, and a number of others were converted to Christ. Not bad for one sermon, is it? Not bad. We'd be happy with that, wouldn't we? How did you get on last Saturday, Mark, or last Sunday, Mark? Oh, we saw a brother come. Well, he wasn't a brother when we first spoke to him, but he became a brother that night. And a few well-to-do people came. Well, I don't mind if it's a few not too well-to-do people come in as well. We don't mind that either, do we? At least I hope we don't. And then there were other disciples that gave their hearts to Christ that day when Paul preached. But he left there alone. And the impact that it had, you see, as he comes into Corinth, he comes in weakness, he comes in fear, and he comes in trembling. But the promise of God was this: I'm with you, Paul. I'm with you. Because of that vision, we're told in verse 11 that he stayed there for 18 months. Again, it's wonderful that he trusts what God has given to him. He stayed there for 18 months. In fact, the call of God seemed to be so strong in Corinth that in verse 18 it says, and he stayed a good while longer. I think I said to you before when, I think it was Maureen Brock said to me one day, how about you being a Sunday school teacher? Arthur Cox had challenged me in the first year of my conversion. At that time, David was working in the tar plant, and David used to finish early to teach an amateur of Sunday school. And Arthur came up to me. I remember that little low part where you'd stand in the corner and there was a part of the platform there. I was sat there leaning up against Arthur was there, he cornered me, he caught me a bootlet. And he said, how about teaching in Sunday school? I said, oh Arthur, I can't. Why not? I said, well, I don't finish till 3. Oh, he said. And he left it at that. Never chased me. But then it came a time when Maureen caught up with me. And she said, how about me? Sunday school teacher. We got a group of teens, just a few of them, let's see how it goes. They were having difficulties in the Sunday school, trying to contain the different age groups. So we tried it. First lesson I had Brian Castle, Ruth Robinson, Louise Matz, Sarah Cooper. Louise and Sarah had earrings down here. I remember it. Louise was in a harlequin suit. Amber this side, brown that side. Brown that side, amber this side. I looked at that, and they set me up that fire door on the first floor. I put a little thing up there, and I went to lean against it, I went straight through the door. It felt right, not falling through, but it felt right. It felt right being there. And I remembered these words here. And it said concerning Paul, he stayed there for 18 months. I remember being in a car with Dave Saunders. And he said to me, so you're going to Sunday school teacher? David was a Sunday school teacher as well. He said, how long? I said to him, I'm not quite sure how long I'll go for. He said, why don't we try 18 months? That's a strange thing, isn't it? It's a strange thing. Do you know, it's one of the loveliest times in your life is when you feel you're in the will of God. It don't matter what others are doing. Don't matter what others are doing. I used to hate the Sunday in work because you knew everybody else was at home. I remember I worked Christmas Day once. The worst shift I ever worked. You knew everybody at home was at home. It never flummoxed me with the Sunday school that I was wishing to be elsewhere. It was a lovely little group. It went from 5 to about 17, 18. Peter's boy, Clark, would be, and he'd have a big appetite, Clark, and he'd fall fast asleep. And we'd wait there and watch until he jumped. But it was a good group together. Do we know what it is to be in the will of God? Paul knew he was alone, but he knew he was in the right place at the right time. Corinth was so different to Athens. Athens was educated, a city to be envied in one regard. Corinth was a market city. It was a harbour town. Just nearby was Penyrheol. The sailors would be there, the street girls would be there, and the street men would be there. It was so different. And yet Paul was in his oils. After he comes in feeling so weary, so battered, so bruised, both physically and emotionally. And yet we find concerning this, when he leaves the city, 18 months, maybe 2 years later, we're not quite sure, we know he stayed a good while longer. This is what it says. With joy and with sacrifice he leaves the city. Verse 18 says this, he remained there a good while longer. And going down to Penyrheol, where the harbour was, he shaved his head, for he had taken a vow. there are only a few occasions when the head is shaved. One of them would be on those occasions when you've taken a vow. You've so appreciated what God has done in the most difficult of circumstances, and they would take a vow and shave the head as a sign of sacrifice and as a sign of thanksgiving. We find it in the peace offering. You'll find there that there were 3 reasons for the peace offering. One was for thanksgiving, one was for voluntary. You just want to give God something and you want to do good for the community. That's all. And the other third one was this, a vow. I've often wondered why Elisha, when he went back home after Elijah had called him to be his servant, he went home and he slew all the cattle that was his. I wonder if he went before as a vow before God. He left the city with sacrifice and joy within his heart. How deep is the valley that you're in? Do you know you can come out with sacrifice and joy? One of my favourite hymns, not hymns, one of my favourite films was on Saturday or Friday. How Green Was My Valley. Do you remember that? Barry Fitzgerald was in there, all the Houston stars were in there. But I loved it when Di Bando goes to see the teacher. And the teacher had given Hugh such a hard time. And Di Bando goes, an ex-boxer. And he says, let me show you 1 or 2 things now, Mr. Whatever his name was. Oh, he didn't have to give him a thumb. But I said to him, I said, stop what you're doing now. I said, stop watching stuff. And it's one of those things, she just looked at his stone face. That's it, is it? But I was crying. I'm hopeless, absolutely hopeless. How deep is the valley that you're in? Do you know you can come out with sacrifice and joy? You found new friends. Old friends have stood at your side. Doors have opened to invite you in. To have friends, you must show yourself friendly, says the Proverbs writer. Know that Paul, what the gospel had done for him to make him a man so approachable, so able to get in amongst people of all sorts, be invited into a house that he'd never been to before, and there he resided. And then to have that comfort of when he's there, God was with him and with you. The promise of the Lord holds true, see, when you're in the service, it holds true. Well, let's have a little look. Verses 19 to 22, as we come to a close. 19 to 23, sorry. He came to Ephesus and left them there. But he himself entered the synagogue and reasoned with the Jews. And when they asked him to stay a longer time with them, he did not consent. For someone who's quite brusque, apparently, and someone who's quite hard to get on with, if you notice how people like to cling on to Paul, don't leave. Don't leave me, will you? Will you stay here? On one occasion, it says that the whole Christian community came out onto the beach and knelt down on the sand and prayed. And they wept as well, for they knew that they would never see him again. He drew love out of people as well as giving love to people. And here it'd be very concerning. Don't leave, they said, don't leave. But he took leave of them, saying, I must by all means keep this coming feast at Jerusalem. It would be in Jerusalem that the law would demand that his hair would be burnt on the altar. So I wonder if part of that feast was this. That part of it was to put that hair of his on the altar of God, that he would be burnt there on the altar. But I will return again to you, God willing. And he sailed from Ephesus. And when he had landed at Caesarea and gone up and greeted the church at Jerusalem, he went down to Antioch. Home had been calling. He wants to go home. That's where his people are. He's in Antioch. After he had spent some time there, he departed and went over the region of Galatia and Phrygia in order, strengthening all the disciples. There are times when you just have to keep going. I know there may be a part of you that says, oh, I did my job this morning. I suddenly become, around about 9:15, I become Philippe, the hairdresser. And I was drying her hair, but as I walked in, she looked at me, she said, oh, you look whacked. And I had one of those coughing bouts. You know nothing about coughing, honestly. And you think, oh, you know, but sold it to the MC, I dried it for her. There's times you've got to keep going. You've got to keep going. Right into the Galatians, it says, let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we do not faint. Therefore, he says, therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all. What a wonderful spirit he has. This is not a new journey for Paul. This is not the first, not the second, this is the third time that he's visiting Galatia. And there are times in the humdrum of Christian service when you feel like saying, let someone else do it. Maybe they do it better than me. But the answer of God comes back and says, keep going. You never know. Keep going. Brainerd penned the letter that said, I'm bringing my ministry to a close. But the Holy Spirit said, keep going. Just one more little circuit amongst the villages, amongst the Native Americans. And in that last journey, the Spirit of God was poured out. And hundreds were saved. James Fraser, out there in Burma, and there he had penned a letter, or was about to pen a letter, just one more trip amongst the villages of the Lisu, the tribal people from the mountains. And in that final trip, where the voice of God perhaps whispered to him, keep going. Keep going. The Spirit of God was poured out. So that today, so they say, 75-80% of the Lisu peoples are Christian. But not. The Karen tribe, huge numbers came to Christ. The Now people, huge numbers came to Christ. What a wonder it is that God is able to take a hold of you. I know there are times when it's hard. There are some having it harder, and that can be a consolation. There are some having it harder. In one sense, this is not to trivialize, but there's been a few days where I just got fed up of coughing. But a consolation to me was this, that Barbara Lewis had been to the doctors for the third occasion to try and sort it out. And you think, well, how did she cope then? How does Deirdre cope? When I have a 5-second bout where this, whatever sorts out the oxygen going down into your lungs, is shut and it won't let me breathe for 5 seconds, how does she cope? When she's alone. It's a consolation, see, that there are people having it harder. Keep going. May God grant it to us a Corinth where we'll meet new friends. Acquaint ourselves with old friends. Enter new houses. Meet new Christians and baptize them. And have that conscious awareness that God is with us, with you. May God grant it to be so, that in the midst of a valley, you might have that spirit of sacrifice and joy that is able to let you move on and do the next circuit of Galatia and Phrygia, and then come down into a new land, Ephesus. And he stays there for 3 years. Didn't go back home all that often, did he? What a man. What a man. What a Christ. Oh, what a Christ alive. May God grant it to us, that we can have hearts that will follow the Lord.